Hello girls, gays, and non-binary babes. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Boston, and today we are doing my March wrap up. So I read 11 or 12 books in March, and I'm really excited to talk about them. I read a lot of horror, and yeah, I think overall I had a really good reading month, so I'm excited to talk about everything. So yeah, let's just jump right on into it. Starting off very strong, the first book I read during the month was Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. This is a very well-known book if you like horror. Even if you don't like horror, I think this is pretty well known for how gruesome it is. This book takes place in a world where a virus has contaminated all of the animals in the world, and so we can no longer eat them for otherwise we'll get infected with it, and it's just a big whole ordeal. So basically we've decided to farm humans, and it's very graphic and very detailed and very, you can tell like the author really thought about everything in this book, and it talks about factory farming, but like the horrors of it, but with humans instead of, you know, regular animals like we do now. And I think this is really interesting. I did give this 5 stars. I think it's fascinating, and I think everybody should read it, even if it's just to like get you thinking about it and thinking about the impact that we have. And I really love this. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I'm very glad I bought my own copy of it because definitely a new favorite book. I just adored this, and it's definitely worth the hype. Next up, we have a novella that I read, and that was Waif by Samantha Kolesnik. This is a very weird story about a woman who, she doesn't really like her husband anymore. He's pretty abusive, and their marriage is basically falling apart, but from the outside it looks like the perfect marriage. She's got money, you know, everything's perfect. It looks perfect. But basically she goes to the store one day and she sees like the man of her dreams, and her husband finds out about this, and it goes down a road of plastic surgery and desire. The end is just so weird. Eventually it goes down a route into the world of underground, the underground corn industry, and it's very dark and disturbing, but it was really interesting in a way, and I really liked this one. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I'm very excited to see more from this author because I think she's gonna be somebody to watch out for. Next, I no longer have this book as I got it from the library, but next I read The Annual Migration of Clouds, and this is by Premi Mohammed. So this is a dystopian story, and it's kind of slice of life. It's not really what I expected from an apocalypse sort of story, but there's a little bit of magic in it, it seems, and definitely like slice of life. And it talks a lot about what you owe people, your family, I guess, and the people who raised you, what you owe to them and what you owe to yourself. And I've really liked this one. I did give it 4 stars. It follows a younger main character, but I don't think it's YA. I think it's adult, but it follows like a 17 or 18-year-old character who wants to go to university, where basically there's only a few universities left in a few safe cities, and she really wants to go, but basically entire group that she's living with, they like need her help farming and stuff like that. And it's quite a short book, but it's really powerful, and I really liked it. So yeah. Next up, we have another really weird book, and we've just got a lot of really weird books this month. But next we have Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. What to say about this book? If you like mushroom horror, fungus horror, then you'll like this one. It definitely reminded me of Mexican Gothic, but this is about a girl who, I believe she's starting university, and she's from, I think she's from a different country, but she's going to school in England. And so it's a whole new experience for her, and at first she's staying at this, it's like a hotel but for like teenagers traveling. I can't remember what they're called now. But she's staying there for a little while, and then she eventually moves in with a girl that she meets. And this girl is very weird, and the place she lives in is very weird also. It's like an old industrial sort of building, and this is where she lives. And our main character moves in with her, and just things start getting really, really weird. And I just loved this book. It was just so eerie and fascinating to me. I don't really know. And this is definitely a book that when you're reading it, you can like feel it and smell it, and it's just disgusting and gross but really cool, and I really liked it. So yeah. Next we have a little bit of a disappointment, and I'll explain in a minute, but McGlue by Ottessa Moshfegh. I love Ottessa Moshfegh's books, but this is probably my least favorite so far. I did give this 3 stars, so I did like it, but it was disappointing. Like, it didn't, I guess my overall thoughts was that it didn't really seem like Ottessa Moshfegh's writing. If you've read her books, you know they're very weird, and there's certain language in it that's just very odd, and this wasn't really like that, although it is her first book. It is a novella, but it takes place in Salem, Massachusetts in 1851, and McGlue is being kept in a hold on a ship for supposedly murdering his best friend. And it kind of delves into memory loss and friendship and all these different things. I did like it, like I said, but I just wasn't, it wasn't really anything special to me. I think maybe if I did reread it, having known how it ends and all that, I would like it a lot more, but so far, my least favorite of hers. Next, we have a nonfiction book, and this was just absolutely fantastic. It was Monster She Wrote. This is by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. So this is a nonfiction about the origins of horror written by women, and I freaking loved it. Well, horror and speculative fiction. So it starts off in like way back when, like Mary Shelley times is what I'm talking. Who was the first one? 1764 was when the first author in here was born. So it goes back as early as that, and it ends like in present day. But yeah, over almost 300 years of women in horror and speculative fiction. It's so fascinating. I got quite the reading list from this book. My favorite part was that at the end of each person there was a recommended reading list, and I really liked that because that's kind of what I was going into this book for. So yeah, highly recommend this if you like horror and speculative fiction. You will definitely have not heard of many of these authors, and you'll get some good reading material, I promise you. I'm so excited to read some more of the authors in here, and I think overall the authors of this book did a really good job putting everything together, and I really liked how it was put into like a timeline of past to present day. Really liked that. Really liked everything about it. So yeah, highly recommend this one. Next up, I read The Mirror Season by Anna Marie McLemore, and I've been meaning to read this book for a while now, ever since it came out last year, like a year ago. And I just never really got around to it. I was never in the right mindset for it. But it is about a girl who is sexually assaulted on the same night at the same party as another guy, and kind of them befriending each other and coming together and like figuring out everything that happened. And like Anna Marie McLemore's other books, there's a little bit of magic and beautiful writing, gorgeous writing, and I really liked this one. I did give it 4 stars. Every single one of Anna Marie McLemore's other books I've given 5 stars, so this was a shock. But unfortunately, I think it's just because I am leaning out of YA, and this is YA, but I am very much leaning out of YA contemporary. And while this does have a bit of magic in it and all that good stuff, magical realism, you know, but it's still a contemporary novel in a sense, so it's just not my vibe anymore. And I'm so sad because I love this author's writing and it makes me sad. But I just don't vibe with YA contemporary anymore, so yeah. I think that's why it was a 4 stars rather than a 5. If I'd read this a couple years ago, it would have been 5 stars. So just know that if you like YA contemporary, then you'll really like this one. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about the next one. Oh my goodness. So next I read Veda Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. This is a dark academia. How do I explain this? So our main character is chosen to go to this school, and I think it's just called like a school of technologies or something like that, something very vague. And in the very beginning, she has a list of tasks that she has to do, like every single day. Like she has to do one thing, random thing, every single day. And then the guy comes back and he's like, okay, now do this. And she gets these coins from doing these activities, and eventually she uses these coins to pay for her school. And this school is so weird. Nobody there knows what's going on. Nobody there knows what they're even studying because everything is written in a different language. Like a language nobody knows, like nobody can understand it. And I'll just leave it at that. That's all I'll give you. This is so freaking weird, but I gave this 5 stars. I freaking loved it. I just loved the main character's journey. Like, thinking about where she started to where the book ended is just, talk about character development. I mean, come on. But yeah, it's weird. It's a little repetitive, I guess. My one complaint might be that some parts felt like they were going too fast, but then some parts felt like they were going too slow. But if they were any different, it wouldn't have been good either. So I think it was the best that the authors could do for a like 500-page book, 400-page book. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But this was incredible. Highly recommend it. And yeah, I just love this. Okay, next up, we have the biggest disappointment of the month, possibly the year so far. And that is From Below by Darcy Coates. I really like her writing. I think it's nothing spectacular, but it's not bad. But I like her stories. So I was so excited for this one of my most anticipated of the year. This is about a group of people who go to explore an old sunken ship, and it's basically from a little bit after the Titanic, I believe, and there's weird shit down there. So it sounds like a recipe for an incredible book, right? I gave this 2.5 stars. I think it was okay. I think the story was pretty solid. It was interesting, kept me interested. The characters, though, are where I was so disappointed. It's not that you can't connect with the characters, it's just that there was nothing about them. And you just kind of go into the book with these characters and you're like, who are these people? I don't know any of them. And eventually you get a tiny bit of backstory for a few of them, but not all of them. And then the backstory that you do get is like not enough. And it's also past halfway through the book, so it's like, well, I've already gone this far without really knowing these characters. So they just seemed really flat, and yeah, I was pretty disappointed, especially considering the possibilities that Darcy Coates had to write really good characters in this story. Like, this story could have been incredible. It could have been, you know, like Into the Drowning Deep, which is one of my favorite books of all time. But it just fell so flat, and I'm so sad. And yeah, probably one of my most disappointing so far this year. I was just so excited to read this. But yeah, 2.5 stars. It was okay, but just not great. Next, I read a book. I wasn't originally going to read this, but I was going to Barnes & Noble. Somebody recommended it to me when I asked for like what I should get, but they didn't have it. But then I went to Barnes & Noble again a couple weeks later and they had it, so I bought it and I read it. Long story short, that is Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. And this, another weird book, you could argue this is dark academia, but this is about teenage girls, and hell hath no fury like a teenage girl. The whole time I was reading this, I couldn't stop thinking of the quote from Jennifer's Body, hell is a teenage girl. If one quote could sum up this book, that's what it is. This is about a woman who is a teacher at this school, and she ends up kidnapping and holding hostage one of her students, and that's how it starts. But then it goes back in the past, like earlier in the year, and it kind of explains like what led up to this and the events that occurred to make this happen. And I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it. I really liked like the look at puberty and like teenage girls, and I really liked that, and it was so fascinating. And there is a sapphic relationship in here. I wouldn't say it's healthy, but it is a sapphic relationship. But yeah, I think what I didn't really like was not knowing where in the timeline I was at some points. Others might not have that issue, but I didn't know that the first chapter was, you know, basically the end of the book, and then it kind of went back into the past. So I think if I had known that, it would have been a little bit easier. It was a little hard to get into, but by the end I was flying through it. So yeah, really like this one. Definitely weird and fun, but in a weird way. So next we have, where did I get this recommendation from? Oh, TikTok. This randomly came up on my TikTok, and I will explain. But that is Stay and Fight by Madeline Madeline Fitch. So this I saw come up on TikTok, and it was like a group of people who work in a bookstore, and it was like, if you could reread one book, what would it be? And when the person like pitched it, they pitched it as like a queer commune, and I don't disagree, but it's not really what the book's about, if that makes sense. But it is really good still. I gave this 4 stars. This is about a woman who is living with her boyfriend, and she buys a patch of land and is living in it in a camper. And eventually her boyfriend goes off to work, and he like off to work a ways away, and just ends up moving and never comes back. And so she makes friends with these 2 queer women who are about to be raising a baby, and they come and live with her eventually, and they like build a house of sorts and are raising this baby, and a bunch of stuff happens. It's kind of hard to explain. It's a lot to explain, basically. But this talks about environmentalism, and is that the right word? Environmentalism? I don't know. And it talks a lot about conservation and pipelines and land and all this good stuff. And it's very, I almost want to call it like hippie-ish, but in a good way. I really liked it. My only problem was that I liked one of like the 5 main characters. Well, 2, I'd argue. Like one of the adults and then the kid. Those were the only 2 characters I liked. I thought the other ones were kind of like bitchy and awful. But you could argue that people are like that, and it's real, and not everybody's perfect, not everybody's a perfect human being. And so you could argue that, yes. So I didn't like fully hate that, but that's just my preference. I don't really like bitchy kind of characters. So yeah, I did really like this though, and I think it's an important read and really interesting. So yeah, finally we have Perfume. Do I gotta cover this up? I hope not. YouTube, don't take this video down. This is a book about smells and a murderer. And what else do I say about this? I don't know. Basically, our main character is an awful person. He's born with no scent to him, no natural scent, but he's obsessed with smells, mainly because he doesn't smell. And he can smell really well. So he works at like a perfume place, and he's got this kind of magical sixth sense when it comes to scents. But it turns very dark very quickly, and by very quickly I mean by the end of the book. This was absolutely fantastic. Another favorite book of mine. I give it 5 stars. It was just incredible. The way scent was described in here, you could really smell it and you could feel everything that was happening, and I was just so engrossed in this book. I could not put it down. It was like watching a train wreck or a car accident. It's like you can't look away, but it's so horrible, and I really loved it. And if you like gruesome, disturbing books, then you will like this one. Very dark, very interesting, and I learned a lot about perfume making during my reading experience. So yeah, definitely enjoyed that and highly recommend this one. And that is my wrap up for this month. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. If you read any of the same books, let me know your thoughts or tell me your favorite book you read this month. I'm always interested to know. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.